Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and I am back again with another classic Battlytics analysis. Tonight we are looking at one of my favorites, the Stalker. I've been getting requests for the Stalker for some time, but I did want to wait until it was a little closer to Wave 2 because of that sweet new plastic mini that I cannot wait to get my hands on. I am hoping that by the time this video drops, I will be swimming through a pool of plastic miniatures like Scrooge McDuck. But we'll see. But let's talk about tonight, guys. So we've got the Stalker. So the 3F is that's like the original gangster, the OG Stalker. It's got like SRMs, 2 LRM-10s, 4 medium lasers, 2 large. It's got a whole bunch of weapons, so many weapons. And the thing can overheat to high hell because it's just what it does. But it's got a devastating alpha strike. Then 3050 comes, and we all have high expectations, but the FedCom just decides to put on large pulse lasers, which is it's like the worst thing in the world. Large pulse lasers of the Inner variety are absolute garbage. In fact, so much so that the refit Stalker costs less battle value than the Succession Wars era one. So I thought this would be a fun analysis because usually it's the other way around. But is this 5S a very cheap way to get a Stalker on the table? I don't know. We're going to dive in. We're going to run them both through the gauntlet one at a time, and then we'll make our decision. So guys, stick around. Stalker on Stalker action is coming right up. All right, here we are. Stalker 3F. Love it. I have one in my Atrian Knights / Avatar Knights Command Lance. 1,559 battle value. I got to tell you, that sounds so cheap after looking at boatloads of clan mechs that all cost over 2,000. This thing seems like a basement bargain buy. It is an assault mech, as we know. It was produced in 2594. That's very venerable. It's slow as turds, 3-5, no jump capability. But I'll be honest with you, being able to move 5 isn't terrible. You can still pick up a +2 if you move in a straight line, but that goes away, obviously, if you do anything else. And, getting a +1 on the walk, it could be an annihilator. It could be worse, guys. The heat... It's got 20 heat sinks, single heat sinks. I mean, that's respectable for this era. And then, of course, all standard equipment with just your regular old fusion engine, which I love because you don't have to worry about those awful 3 criticals in the side torsos, which, for Inner mechs, I think it's an absolute killer. This thing is well armored, 13.5 tons, got 216 pips. It's pretty good, 82% coverage. Most mechs you'll see around 75%, so 82% is right in there. A little light on the arms, very light on the legs. And one thing I actually realized about the Stalker when I was doing this analysis, and I'll be honest with you, I never realized this until tonight, so shame on me. This thing has no lower arm actuators. I mean, I don't know why it didn't dawn on me. Obviously, if you look at the miniature, it doesn't. But you can arm flip with it. You can shoot those LRM-10s and those medium lasers into your rear arc. I don't know why I never realized this before. Now, beware Tom, beware Kevin. My Stalkers are going to be more dangerous. But that's great for a mech that's this slow. Having 4 medium lasers be able to, flip around and shoot in the back, that's huge. Anyway, service history. So this thing never goes out of style. It stays around all the way, according to the master unit list, all the way into the Dark Age and the Clan era. So this thing is definitely earning its status as an epic mech. Armament, we talked about this a little bit already. Twin LRM-10s, 4 medium lasers, and then in the torso, it's got 2 SRM-6s and 2 large lasers. It's hefty. Can build up a lot of heat, so you got to use those weapons sparingly. Even firing both the LRM-10s and the 2 larges will put it over its heat capacity, right? So this thing can get hot quick. Speaking of that, why don't we take a look at the red line benchmark and kick off our our offensive analysis here of this juggernaut of doom. What does this tell us? Well, first things first, let's talk about the baseline. It does 173.5 points of damage on the baseline. That means you don't build up any heat past 4 points, right? You don't take on any heat penalties for movement or anything like that. 173.5. That's pretty good. When you decide to squeeze the trigger too much and build up a ton of heat, you can do so very quickly. You know, halfway, like turn 6, you can see this thing spiking up to 30 points of heat, and then it just sits up there, and the damage goes through the floor. So 79.5 points of damage on the red line benchmark. It's abysmal. It's almost 100 points lost of damage over 12 turns, which I think is actually similar to the linebacker as well. That did not do well on the red line benchmark. So both of these mechs, you know, very much able to heat up. The Stalker, that means, you know, we can probably try to squeeze it for a little bit more damage. We were able to only get 6.4% out of it. I tried like every combination of weapons, you know, what could I do to try to really min-max the damage, and just not a whole lot you can do. I'll talk about why in a minute, but I just want to underscore the fact that, you know, 218 points of heat this thing can build up in 12 turns. Think about that. That's an absurd amount of heat. It's the large lasers. I'm going to tell you right now, they're awful. It's the worst weapon in the game. Well, or the large pulse laser of the inner sphere variety. We'll find out soon. Which one is worse? That's what this Battlytics analysis is about, really. Which flavor of large laser is actually worse? But let's take a look at the lethality index. So some interesting things here. So the Stalker was actually unable to bring down the Javelin 100% of the time. That blew my mind. I actually ran this thing twice, and it came out the same. 97%. I don't know why. It's just not good. So the reason is it can't bring enough weapons to bear fast enough. Like the LRMs, the SRMs, they're spraying all over this mech. It doesn't have any kill shot weapons, and the large lasers are heat gobblers, so it doesn't use them. And you can tell because this thing, again, 10% of the kills were engine kills. That means it's not actually destroying the mech. It's hitting the engine enough times to 3 times, right? I mean, think about how many armor pips a Javelin has. Not many. So this thing is just spraying guns everywhere. 6.1 critical hits is about twice as many critical hits as you see normally. So this thing is, in fact, a walking shotgun. Time to kill is like over 9.9 turns. It's awful. I mean, the average is 10, and for an 85-ton mech, like, I don't know. I was expecting much better here. Again, doesn't change my love for the Stalker. It is what it is. This is a mech that is designed to just shred things, but not in the way you would think. I think we're used to seeing Gauss, ERPPCs, right? Things like that are delivering a lot of damage. We've been looking at Ill-Clan variants, which are obviously disgusting. This is, I think, classic Succession Wars era. You know, you've got a couple of things that can hurt you at range, and then like a bunch of medium lasers and SRMs. So Stalker kind of living up to the expectation, I think, there. I am interested to see survivability. I'm expecting it to be low because this thing is just loaded with ammo, but let's see. Looking at the armor diagnostic in the top left, it's actually not bad. Torso, arms, all well covered. It is important to note that the arms actually house the LRM-10 ammo. So that's pretty intriguing. SRM ammo is in the side torsos. Rear armor looks pretty good. Legs are under-armored substantially. You know, probably by about 10%. I mean, is that a problem? Let's look at the mobility analysis. So this thing's only taking a motive critical 1.9% of the times it's being hit. So again, you shot 100 times, somebody lands 100 shots on you, only 2 of them are going to be motive criticals. A very infrequent occurrence. And if you look at the target mod degradation, it's pretty low. So it goes from 2 down to 1.6. Really not a lot of loss there. The average target mod for this mech is 1.93. So again, very rarely losing any steam, and it's already so slow, like who cares? I mean, if you do take it, I will say this, if you do take a leg actuator hit and your speed goes down, you become a 2-3, which is just abysmally slow. I mean, you can barely get up hills with that thing. So there is a bit of that going on, but largely, from a mod perspective, as long as you're on some flat ground or you're not like trudging through forest, you should be okay. Now the big one, survivability. It's actually not terrible, 84.1%. Like I was expecting it to honestly be in the 70s with all the ammo on board. Although ammo deaths do make up the majority of kills here. Look at that. So 10.3% are ammo kills. CT deaths, only 4.7% of the time. As you can imagine, killing a Stalker from the outside in, it's a big proposition. It doesn't die from engine hits very frequently either. Only 1% of the total deaths were from engine kills. So the majority of this thing is ammo deaths. I would wager that the majority of that is actually from, SRM 6 ammo. If you look at the ammo analysis in the center there at the bottom, what that shows is the percent chance to hit the ammo if you confirm a critical. What does that mean? Well, as you know, not every critical slot on the chart is always filled out. Some of them are roll agains, some of them are weapons, some of them are heat sinks, some of them are other things, right? So what's the percent chance that you're going to hit ammo versus hit something else versus hit a roll again, have another chance, right? It looks at all of that and it figures out like this is, it's just simple math, right? There's no analysis really, it's just division. Far more likely, I say far more likely, but you're definitely more likely, I think it's like 20%, 16.7% to hit the ammo in the left torso. It's only about 12.5% to hit it in the arms. The arms are a little bit more packed out. So does that make a notable difference? I don't know. But that combined with the probability that you're hitting the side torsos more often than the arms, I don't know. So anyway, I just sort of off on a tangent. But the ammo death's definitely the number one contributor here. But overall, not too bad. It's not too bad, 84.1%. So let's take a look at the efficiency. I'm interested to see where this one falls. Look at that. It's not bad. 7.86. Better than a linebacker, guys. But again, that's because it's so cheap. And again, that's what this analysis does, is it's looking at the bang for buck. Let's go back up to the top. Let's take a look at the effectiveness of this mech. So we're looking at the blue area and the purple area. So that is basically, the blue areas are optimized ACD. We talked about that. That's 184.7 points of damage. The effective ACD is the optimized times your survivability. So as the survivability drops, that purple area is going to decrease. We lose about 7.1% of our damage due to survivability loss. It's not terrible. 10% is sort of our, my mental threshold at least. Anything that's below 10 is in good shape. And this mech, I think, is in good shape. Again, 84.1% survivability. I think that's a great number. Let's talk about gunnery sensitivity. So this thing is 0.7. That means you are getting some economy of scale from investing on increasing its gunnery. You can see the slope on this thing. When you go from gunnery 4 to 3, there's a pretty substantial jump. From 3 to 2, also a great jump. Less so from 2 to 1, but still it's there. And even at gunnery 0, I mean, this thing up in almost 9 at the efficiency scale. That's pretty good. At gunnery 0, this thing is doing 241 points per 12 turns of effective damage. That's averaging 20 points of damage per turn. Like, averaging. That's pretty good. And again, that's on the optimized benchmark where we're not really looking at overheating this thing to high hell, right? I mean, it's, again, it can, but we're not doing it. So, overall, not bad. We did lose a little bit of damage from our survivability. We did see a gain, again, from just overheating early, late in the game, like around turns 11, turn 10, turn 11, turn 12. So at the end of the day, our effective ACD was slightly below our baseline, but pretty much in there within 1% basically, so not too bad. So that's that. I mean, 7.86, very happy with that number. Let's talk about the role evaluation, the threat, where I'd play this mech, why. Brawler, yes. Defender, yes. And then Vanguard, yes. So let's talk about Brawler. I'd like, again, this epiphany where you can arm flip with this mech. It's a big deal, guys. I think that you can get this thing in a city fight. You've got twin SRM6s, you've got 4 medium lasers. You can supplement with a large laser here and there, or if you want to just alpha strike and really hurt something, I mean, you have the firepower to do it. Yes, your LRMs are not effective. You know, you've got a 6-inch minimum range effectively, or a 6 hex minimum range, but that's okay. I think that's okay. Defender, this thing's great. It's slow. You can dig it in. It can take a lot of damage. It does have twin LRM 10s, does have 2 large lasers. Let it sit back. If things come to you, you're on, I mean, I'm imagining you're on an objective defending it. They have to come to you. Like, let them come into range of your SRMs and medium lasers. I mean, like the fly into the spider's web there. I mean, this thing is not something you want to tangle with. They're going to have to slow down. They're going to have to try to put fire on the Stalker and weaken it before they get to point blank range. One of this mech's biggest weaknesses is its speed. And if you have the ability to plant it on an objective in partial cover and deliver damage, that's pretty good. All right, Vanguard. So this mech, even though it's slow, it's not a cavalry mech, but you can sit this thing out in the middle and let it take fire. It has good range, and, you know, again, it's moves 5. You can run this thing. It can actually get up and go. King Crabs, you know, Atlases, like other big mechs like that, even Annihilators, which, oh my god, they're so slow, but, you know, other big and slow mechs, I mean, I think this thing, Highlanders, right, this thing can get out there and really take some punishment and do very well at it. So those are the roles I'd play. Let's look at the threat assessment. So, I mean, the first thing I'm going to call out is the Alpha Strike basically breaks the chart. The peak Alpha Strike is 80 at 9 inches. Like, let it marinate. You know, that that's crazy. That's 5 tons of armor. Just, you can melt off if you hit with everything, of course. Remember, the Alpha Strike is you land all your clusters, you hit all your weapons, like the dice go entirely your way. When you do that, you build up 25 points of heat just instantly. Like, that's what you're running cool and you fire everything, boom, 25 points of heat. So there's that. But again, 5 tons, you can melt 5 tons of armor. What's interesting about this mech is sort of if you follow the peak, the ACD, rather, the light red, the ACD and the zero heat ACD, it kind of goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down, goes up, right, goes down. What is that? Well, that's all the different range profiles, right? You're coming into minimum range of the LRMs, but then you're crossing over to the, you know, medium range threshold of your medium lasers and your SRM6s, and then you get to short range and so on and so forth. The optimum range for this mech is 3 inches. Don't be at 7 inches. Don't be at 4 inches. Like, don't be at those inches. Don't be at those hexes. At 7, you're not at medium range of all your big guns. That's where you want to be. And when I say big guns, I mean like your meat and potatoes guns, which are your SRMs and your medium lasers. Get into that extra hex if you can. Don't be at 4 inches, because again, you're in an awful spot with your LRMs because you've gotten even closer, right? You made it even harder, but you're not quite at short range of your, you know, your mainstay, you know, your broadside of medium lasers and SRM6s. So 6 inches, 3 inches, that's where you want to be. At 3 inches, your peak ACD is 46.8. So if you're rolling on average, you can do 46.8 points of damage. That's a ton. That's enough to trigger a piloting check twice, right, from tons of damage. I will say the ACD cap, right, that's the difference between what you're expected to do and what you could do if the dice went your way, is 58.5%. So that's because you do have, again, 4 missile weapons that are fairly large size racks, 2 6s, 2 LRM-10s. So there is a bit of fate of the dice that's going to be in there. But if you roll very hot on your clusters, you know, that it could be a devastating barrage. We talked about the arcs of fire, right? This thing, again, with the arm flipping, it's got a really great medium range barrage and even a long range barrage. Remember, those LRM-10s are on those arms. You know, if you find that you have an opportunistic shot out the back at something, you can flip those arms around and lob some LRM-10s out the back. Very cool. So overall, how do I feel about the Stalker? I love it. I think that it is not the mech you want to give to the guy that's just starting to play Classic. It's way too complicated. It's way too hard to pilot, but it is a very, very solid mech. This thing, again, great efficiency, 1,500 points base, right, for your gunnery 4, piloting 5 type, profile. But even playing this at gunnery 2 and things along those lines, you really can get some excellent return on investment for this mech. But how about the 5S? What do you think, guys? Let's dive in. All right, so here it is, Stalker 5S. You know what I love about this thing? Look how cheap it is. Like, costs less than a Marauder. 1423, 1,423 battle value. It's so cheap. And it's not skimping on the armor. It's got the same amount of armor, same speed, same heat dissipation, basically the same weapons, except for you're swapping large lasers with large pulse lasers. But then it's got an XL engine, which I hate. You know that. All right, so let's talk about this thing for a minute. Let's talk about the large pulse lasers. Why are they awful? Their range sucks. They're incredibly hot. And in fact, I was reading Sarna, and basically the the characteristic that is often associated with this mech is that pilots think it overheats all the time. So is that true? I don't know. I don't think it is, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I didn't shoot the large lasers before, and I'm certainly not going to shoot them now. I don't think it needs them to shoot. Redline benchmark. Absolutely delicious. It looks very similar. So it actually does slightly less damage, by the way, on the baseline. So we're at 168.7 on the baseline here, and the red line is actually slightly higher at 94.4. What I find really interesting, though, is the total heat over 12 turns is substantially less by about 40 or so points, a little less than that, but it's 180. I believe the other Stalker was at 216. Why is that? Because the large pulse lasers aren't coming into range until 10 inches or 10 hexes, whereas the other garbage large lasers, you could start building up heat with those at 15 hexes. So, is that a benefit? I don't know. It's kind of like an awful benefit, I guess. Optimized ACD, what could I do with this thing? I got it up to 179.8. I think the other Stalker, what did we say, was a 184 or so. It was a 6.6% gain. I think the other one was, let me jump back to it, was a 6.4% gain. So 184.7 optimized on the other one, 179 here. So this one I was able to squeeze a little bit more out of by percent, but still not quite as much as the 3F. But again, you're talking a few points of damage. Largely so far, these things are the same. When I look at the lethality index, it looks very familiar, right? About 10% of the kills are engine kills. 98% on the Javelin kills there, though, for the 97.7 to be precise. The other one was 97.4 to be exact. So, I mean, they're basically doing the same thing in terms of the lethality. The time to kill is actually a little bit higher here than it was on the Stalker 3F. And again, that's because those large pulse lasers not coming into range. Critical hits generally in the same ballpark. So very interesting. So far, these mechs, not very different. I will say, couple of diamonds in the rough. Number one, this does more damage on the red line. That means you can run it a little bit hotter. The other diamond in the rough here is that those pulse lasers, they do give you that benefit, that -2 to hit. That is a nice thing. I'm wondering if that's going to come into play later when we look at the efficiency and the gunnery sensitivity and things like that. We'll see. But the other thing is the XL engine. I'm afraid to turn to the next screen because I feel like engine deaths are going to be a big thing. Let's see. Not as bad as I thought. I'll be honest. That's not terrible. So let's start on the left. It's identical. It's the same. Shockingly, the mobility analysis came out identical too. That tells me that Battlytics works because it's the same exact thing, right? I mean, you're basically looking at mechs here with packed out leg criticals. You're looking at mechs that move the same, have the same leg armor, so you would expect the same results, and we basically got the same results to the number. So when we look at the 5S's survivability, it is slightly less, 80.3%. The other Stalker, the 3F, was at 84. So we're looking at a 4% difference in survivability. Engine deaths at 7.2%, so that is notably higher. Ammo deaths are a little bit lower, but that very well could be a byproduct of the fact that it's dying from the ammo hits before you're really taking out the engine. So I think that's a big thing there. And then CT head deaths, basically what we've got there, 5.1%, which is roughly the same 4.7% on the other one, on the other Stalker. So largely it's the same. The one thing I do want to call out, though, is the ammo analysis is different. So the criticals are packed out differently. The arms are the same. Actually, I'm sorry, the arms are different as well. So the arms are 14. It's actually more likely you're going to hit the ammo in the arms on this one, but substantially less likely in the torso. That's interesting. I wonder if that probably plays into the ammo numbers as well. So jumping down now to the efficiency analysis for the Stalker 5S. What do we got here? So 8.7% damage loss. As I had mentioned before, 10% is really that number we're looking for. It was less on the 3F, but that's expected again because the survivability is lower by about 4%. But the efficiency rating is higher, 8.24. It's almost comical. That's because the thing is so cheap. It just does really well. And I mean, let's face it, it's doing damage. I mean, the 4 medium lasers, SRM6s, pulse lasers, I mean, this thing is as a force to be reckoned with. Gunnery sensitivity is actually less than the Stalker 3F. It's probably because of the pulse lasers. So what's interesting about this one is you can play this at Gunnery 3. You're going to get an efficiency of 7.47. It's almost the same as playing the 3F at Gunnery 2. The 3F at Gunnery 2 is just slightly more efficient. So you could actually get some good ROI in terms of your battle value, making, stretching it over your lance, getting the most bang for buck with this particular variant versus the 3F. It's very interesting. So when we look at the, the sort of the efficiency, the effectiveness, we have a net change of minus 2.7%. So the effective ACD on this mech is 164.1. On the Stalker 3F, it was 171.6. So we're talking about 6 points of damage, guys, over 12 turns. It's a half a point per turn. And you're talking about saving, potentially a couple hundred battle value when this thing is modified, for piloting and gunnery. Probably even more, maybe 300 points, depending on what levels you're going with. That's substantial, right? That's min-maxing at its finest. So was very interested to see that this thing is actually more efficient. And to be clear, like 8.24, so that purple line in the efficiency rating in the bottom left, right? That's the bell curve of every mech we've ever run through Battlytics, period, right? Every single mech. And it's this is pretty good because, the average is about a 5. Most mechs are in that 4 to 6 range. And 8, you can see there are very few mechs that are off. If you look at the area under the curve from 8 to beyond, there are very few mechs that are in that sort of trailing, right-hand side of the bell curve. So being there is a distinguished honor for the Stalker 5S. And I really thought this thing was going to suck because I hate large pulse lasers. Potentially even more than I hate large lasers. But again, when I think back to how I use the Stalker, I almost never fire the large lasers. Like every now and then I'll work it in with the LRM-10s until everything else is in range, then I stop firing them. Unless like some catastrophic damage happens, you lose a bunch of weapons or, both your arms are blown off or something. But, very rarely do I use them. In this scenario, the large pulse run a little bit hotter. They have worse range, but they have that -2. So when you do shoot them, you're probably going to hit with them. So, as far as a, pure weapon efficiency goes, maybe they're a little bit more efficient. All right, let's take a look at the threat. Let's take a look at the roles. Where would I play this mech? All right, so would not play this thing in a defender role. We talked about a defender for the 3F. Would not do that here. Put this thing in the city and let it go hog wild. Put it in a vanguard role. Run it up the field. Try to get it in, stuck in with another mech as quickly as possible. As soon as you get to 9 inches, you're in business, in my opinion. You look at the threat assessment below, you can see, I mean, this thing has an alpha strike of 82. So its alpha strike is actually slightly more than the 3F. And the ACD cap is a little bit higher, 62.2%. That's because those pulse lasers, again, are more reliable. They're hitting more. So when you do get in range, your ACD is going to be a little bit higher because, you know, if you do alpha strike, you got -2 with both of those large pulse. So, you know, it's the same thing, right? Stay away from your 4s and 7s. You know, get it 6 and 3 if you can. And, you know, I think this mech will do pretty well for you. Even at 9 inches, it's doing pretty well. You know, again, this thing can build up ridiculous amounts of heat. It can actually, a single trigger pull will build up 29 points of heat. So take that for what it's worth. An alpha strike on this mech could certainly kill it. But hey, whatever. You only live once, right? So that's that. That's all I've got on the Stalkers. So which one would I choose? Actually, guys, I'll take the 5S. I mean, this is a game of numbers for me. When I'm looking at building the most efficient lance, I want the thing that packs the most punch for the least amount of points. This thing, I mean, it's just a nuts and bolts mech, right? You just play it on the field, you get it up the field, and you just start pulling the trigger. Again, not a mech that I would give a new player. I think this is a very nuanced mech. Again, you've got the arm flipping, you got some of these other goofy things going on, right? You want to make sure that you're using this thing effectively and, you know, as best as possible. But again, 1423, like, if I'm in a duel and it's this thing against a Marauder, I'm going to take this thing every day of the week. I mean, I just will. I mean, the 2 PPCs don't scare me that much. The Marauder can't really run with firing 2 PPCs. Eventually, it's either going to overheat and I'm going to close, or I'm going to wear it down enough with the LRM-10s that it's going to want to get its other guns in range. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like this 5S has a lot of potential. I've never played it. I kind of want to. So, you know, we'll see. Maybe we'll see it on the table when I get my exciting new Wave 2 Stalker Mini. But that's it. This one's wrapped up. So I hope you enjoyed this Lost Tech Comparo for the upcoming Wave 2 Minis. A couple of reminders. Number one, guys, please subscribe if you have not done so already. Also, one quick note, you can check all these mechs out and more over at www.battlytics.com. Thanks to our patrons over at Patreon, we are looking at revamping the whole website soon and you know, adding some capabilities there. So that's something to keep an eye out on for down the road. And of course, if you want to get involved and help support the channel, you can head on over to Patreon. The link is in the description. But there are a few different tiers you can get in at. You know, $1 is the basic tier. That's all we ask, is just $1, guys, if you want to help out. But of course, there are other tiers, $5 and $10, that can get you all sorts of fun stuff like our digital toolkits. And then, of course, you can get involved in some of the challenges, and we have upcoming campaigns and things for our veterans to get involved in, so some pretty exciting stuff there. But that's it, guys. I'm done. I'm wrapped up. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and of course, stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a good night.